This is the Rebel Author Podcast, where we talk about books, business, and occasionally bad words. Hello, Rebels, and welcome to the Rebel Author Podcast, episode 60. That's like a landmark episode. I can't believe we're at episode 60. That is, we are racing towards episode 100. Thanks, guys. Thanks for sticking around. I'm getting so emotional. Anyway, okay. On with business. Who am I speaking to today? Well, on this episode, I'm going to be joined by Michelle Summers, and we're going to be talking through tips and tricks to help you write a better synopsis. But first, to last week's question, which was, is writing fast important or not in the current publishing climate? Julie Westerfeld said, I think it's important. Everything moves so quickly in the publishing world. Don't try to write a novel for a trend that is already established. Even if you self-publish, by the time your novel goes public, the trend will have evolved. But if you want to make a living out of writing, and good luck on that, especially if you work in the French market, then you need to write fast. You need to publish a lot of books. You need time to learn how to market them, time you won't use to write, and it might still not be quite enough to make a living out of writing in some situations. So I appreciate the comments, but I have to disagree. I do think that you can make a living in this world. I do think that you can work for yourself. There are constantly people creating new businesses, constantly people leaving their jobs to do this full time. That's not to say it's not difficult. It's fucking hard, but you can do it. I've done it, and you know, I'm just some girl from the UK who managed to find a niche that works. So you absolutely can do it. You have to work hard. You have to learn harder. You know, there are lots of things in the industry that change constantly, like you said, but it can be done. It can still be done in 2020, and anybody can do it if you are stubbornly determined enough. Okay, Scott Kavanagh. He says, the question has come at an interesting time for me as my writing has ground to a halt over the past week. I have been trying to find some kind of process or outlining method to move me through a first draft faster. Part of this, I know, is the pressure to write faster, as that's the only way to make a living in publishing. I'm gonna have to disagree with a lot of the comments today. Anyway, Scott finishes by saying, this always leads to a week of fumbling around before acceptance kicks in that I am an intuitive writer, and it may take me longer to finish a book. I think I need to read about successful, slower publishing authors and bin the craft books until the editing stage. So yeah, like, I definitely agree that reading craft books whilst you're trying to draft is not always beneficial to your process, but it really depends what kind of writer you are. Like, I love reading craft books at any time, but if it's not working for you and you're finding it counterproductive, then absolutely stop. You have to find the process that works for you. Now, that said, I want to come back to the comment that says writing faster is the only way to make a living in self-publishing. I call bullshit on that. I do not write and publish fast at all, and I make a living in self-publishing. So yeah, I just don't believe that's true, and maybe I have to try and hunt around for people who don't write fast and get some people on here who are writing slower and still making a living, because I need you guys to believe that it's possible, because it is possible. So yeah, I'm going to make that my mission this week, to find somebody to bring on here who writes and publishes slower and still makes fucking good dollar. Amy Sund says, I would tend to think it has more to do with your readership than the climate. The fans you want are the ones who will read what you write when you can get it out. Sure, leaving a series hanging indefinitely is not ideal. Just ask many fantasy readers. But when the next one does come out, they will still read it. It's more about the financial end once you start thinking in terms of the publishing climate. Val Neal said, I just started listening to the episode and I'm sorry at how hard I laughed about the finger cutting story. I hope you're okay. The funk thing really hit home. I've been like that for half of the year, finally feeling a bit better. I'm glad that you're feeling better. My finger is a fucking apocalypse right now. It's really taken quite a long time to heal, and I don't know if that's because I'm exhausted or, you know, and so my body's slightly run down, or as my wife very cleverly pointed out, because it was a clean cut. Obviously, when you cut yourself and it's not with a knife, it's not a slice, it's got serrated edges, and so it mats back together much easier. This was a clean cut, and so my finger's looking a bit like a war zone at the moment. Okay, so this week's question is, what one thing do you want to achieve by the end of the year? And I'm going to tell you my thing because I feel like being accountable today. So the thing that I want to achieve is I'm going to give my website a refresh. The same refresh I was supposed to give it at the beginning of the year, and I still didn't get around to doing it. And combined with that, I need to sort out whether or not I am actually going to do the mailing list move and all of that. And then if I am, I need to actually get the fucking mailing list moved. So, yes. All right, book recommendation of the week. This week is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Now, why am I recommending this to you? Because, oh my goodness me, I don't know why it has taken me so long to read Ray Bradbury, because I've been recommended him a number of times and I just not done anything about it. But anyway, I was in a bit of a reading funk, and so I picked it up. My wife, I gave my wife 3 books, and I was like, pick between these, and she picked the teeny one because she was like, you'll get through it quicker and then you'll feel like you've achieved something. She knows me so well. And so anyway, I started reading it, and holy crap, Ray Bradbury is a master of prose. He it is beautiful. It is weird. It is unnerving. It is seriously prophetic. So I think it was written in the 50s or published in the 50s, I think. And holy shit, like the unnerving, half of it is unnerving because it's written in an unnerving way. And the other half is because, man, he was psychic. It is so scarily similar to a lot of the stuff today. You guys need to just, whatever you're doing, do yourself a favour. It's a very short book. Go read it this week. Okay, on to personal update. So, like I've mentioned, my projects in the next couple of weeks are going into the back end of my website, giving it an aesthetic refresh, giving it a back end refresh, sorting out all my mailing list. It's going to be a hard couple of weeks because I'm not the most techie person and this stuff really stresses me out. But in order to move my business where I want it to go, the website is no longer functioning as I need it to. And so I have to get on with this now. I have also finished my content marketing plan for 2021, and I'm going to share some lessons that I have learnt about content marketing, first with my patrons, and then I will put it on the blog eventually. But yeah, I've learnt an awful lot about content marketing, and it's really changed my perspective and and my focus for next year. I have been doing NaNoWriMo, and do you know, I now don't know how I'm supposed to say NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo? I don't know. I blame Dan Wilcox. He has messed up my brain because he says it one way and I was saying it the other way, and now I'm totally confused which way you're supposed to say it. Anyway, I am doing Nano. I have ground to a bit of a halt. It's always what happens in the second week. I was looking back through my history of Nano, and typically by about the 16th I grind to a halt, and it's because my brain requires some processing time. I can only vomit words for so long before I need percolation time, and I need to then input as well. Like outputting and vomiting words on the page is a huge outflowing process, and I have to then input in order to be able to I'm like a battery. Basically, like I wound myself down and I need to recharge the batteries. But yes, so I'm trying to like input binge in order to be able to continue with Nano. I don't think I'm going to hit the 50k. I'm completely okay with that because I will probably get fairly close to a finished book by the end of what month are we? October? No, November. Oh my god, it's been such a long year. Yeah, so by the end of November, I will probably have most of a book, the side characters book. And also, I have been working on the How to Self-Publish course, which will be launched in early next year. I'm going to set up a waitlist for it. I'm probably going to do a webinar just before it launches. But yes, these are all things that I'm just thinking about rather than having them set in stone. And last but by no means least, Trey. Trey is the one that sort of slipped off the pile in the last couple of weeks, and I need to bring that back on. But apparently there's only 24 hours in a day. Who knew? I didn't know. So yes, I am running rapidly out of time at the moment. So when I announce some of the things I'm going to do next year, you're all going to think I'm fucking mental. Personally, I think I'm slightly bonkers as it is. Anyway, if you haven't checked out the Senses course, then you can. It's still available. And I will put a link in the show notes to that. And last but by no means least, don't forget the story bundle. So the story bundle is for Nano. It's storybundle.com/Nano. And it will expire, I think, just after the end of Nano. Nano. I'm going to stick with Nano now because I'm so confused about how you say that damn word. Yeah, so it's going to end, I think, around the 2nd of December, 3rd of December, something like that. And this is the bundle of writing craft, writing business, writing marketing, writing audio type books. There's books from Joanna Penn, from Honore Corder, from Kevin J. Anderson, Andrea Pearson, Christine Catherine Rush. There's a course from Dean Wesley Smith. So there's absolutely stacks of stuff and you can get it for just $20. So if you haven't gone and looked through it yet, what are you doing? Go have a look. All right, Rebel of the Week this week is Victoria L.K. Williams. Victoria says, I was rebellious about 2 years ago when my husband decided we were too busy with the business for me to take part in Nano. Very timely rebellion, this one. I finally agreed with him and after a couple of hours said, screw that. I did Nano behind his back, writing late at night. I won that year, and when it was over, I published the book and very smugly sent him a print-on-demand copy. That is hilarious. I love the writing rebellions. But that said, I also love any other type of rebellion. Just love your rebellions. One more quick thing. Michelle Summers, who is the guest today, has very kindly given you a summary synopsis kind of cheat sheet, which you'll be able to find in the show notes. So if you enjoy what she's saying, if you'd like to learn more and have a guide, then you can download that. The link is in the show notes. All right, 2 new patrons this week. Thank you very much to Emma Jeffrey and Jeff Elkins. A lovely chat with Emma this week, all about strengths. So thank you so much for joining me. And Jeff, you owe me a fucking tome on dialogue. So if you're listening, consider this a public spanking in a motivational chat in order to get you to finish that book. Thank you, as always, to all of my old and new patrons alike. If you would like to get early access to all of the episodes, as well as bonus content like the lessons that I have learned from or about content marketing, which I will be writing in the next couple of weeks, then you can from as little as $2 a month by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. Don't forget then, you can get the summary synopsis cheat sheet in the show notes from Michelle. And without further ado, let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome to the Rebel Author podcast. Today I am joined by Michelle Summers. Michelle is a professional killer and matchmaker, a storyteller and a romantic. Words are her power and her passion. Her heroes and heroines always get their happy ever after, but she'll put them through one hell of a journey to get there. Michelle lives in Melbourne with her real-life hero and 3 heroes in the making, as well as Emerald, a black furry feline who thinks she's a dog. Oh, we're going to talk about that in a second. And Cammy, a goofy rescue pup. Her debut novel, Lethal in Love, won the Romance Writers of Australia's 2013 Valerie Parv Award and 2016 Romantic Book of the Year. Michelle teaches writing craft in simple and easy to follow steps. Her Simply Synopsis strategy has revolutionized the way writers craft a synopsis, and now her characterization through narration strategy is helping writers master the art of strong, character-driven storytelling. I think I may chuck in another couple of questions about your characterization stuff, but I'll throw those in at the end if that's all right. First of all, tell me about the cat, because I have a cat who thinks she's a dog too.
Hi, Sasha. Thanks for having me here. My cat, yeah, she's a funny thing. She acts so much like a dog. Like when we go out, she'll run to the door and she's always waiting for us when we come home. And if we throw things, she doesn't quite fetch, but she runs after them and tries to fetch. So it's yeah.
That's kind of how our cat is as well. We have actually got her playing fetch, but do you know what a Nerf gun is?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we have like these Nerf gun bullets and she'll only play fetch with those. Like I can't tell you why.
So cute.
I know, it's bizarre. So I'll like fire off a gun and like she'll like, you know, pew, out of the living room or whatever. And then like, you know, a few seconds later she'll come like carrying this Nerf bullet back in her mouth, you know, for you to fire it off again. It's so sweet.
Oh, that is too cool.
We think she's also half human, because whenever it's dinner time, she will come and sit on the 4th chair and just sort of watch us eating, but she'll be sat on the chair with her little head above the table, like because she wants to be included. It's so funny.
I love it. I love it. Oh, my kids would love that. I'm not telling them the Nerf gun thing, because they'll want a Nerf gun and they'll want to do exactly the same thing, and the dog will get there first. So
yeah. Oh, amazing. I love it. Okay, well, tell everyone a little bit more about you and your writing journey and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I think I'm one of those cliche kind of writers where I always loved writing and books when I was little. I used to write poetry and short stories for my eyes only. And I always wanted to be a writer, but I grew up in Wellington, New Zealand, in a reasonably conservative community. So firstly, loving romance was a no-no in those days. And it was kind of one of those things that people would read. If they read romance, they would hide it, or they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't advertise the idea. So I was a closet romance reader and wanted to write romance. And I never really did it because I never, I guess, believed I could do it, or wanted to upset the people around me, if that makes sense. So I guess we can go forward to 10 years ago when my youngest went off to kinder, and I suddenly thought, I was married, you know, I had 3 kids, and I thought, you know what, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. So I sat down and I started writing, and I had no idea how. So 6 weeks later, I had 80,000 words written of a romance that is very spicy romance that will never see the light of day, simply because I had no idea what I was doing. So, and around about that time, my husband actually went on a work conference, and he was sitting next to a guy, and they were talking about their partners. And Danny's like, you know, what does your partner do? Oh, she writes. And Danny's like, oh, my wife started writing recently. And then he's like, oh, what does your wife write? Romance. Oh, my partner writes romance. So they were chatting away. It was really funny. And you know, has she looked into all these writing groups in Melbourne? Because I was living in Melbourne at the time. And my husband was like, no, tell me. So he wrote down all these names. And anyway, short story long, I contacted the Melbourne Romance Writers Guild, and kind of a month later, I was at one of their meetings. And 7 years later, I'm now the treasurer. And those people are they're my tribe. They've been my inspiration and my my cheering squad, and we're every, each other's cheering squad for the last however many years. It's been amazing. So, okay, and just a little bit about my actually writing career after that. At that meeting, that first meeting, there was a lady there who had entered a competition and she just won. And it was called the Valerie Parv Award. And for that competition, if you win an amazing lady called Valerie Parv for a mentor for a year. And I sat there and I thought, I want to do this. I actually want to win that competition. And so I started learning craft. I did everything I could to learn craft. I went to conferences. I did workshops. I read books. I spoke to everybody and just sponged everything in. And a couple of years later, I entered the Valerie Parv. I think it was 34th, which wasn't last, wasn't first. And I suddenly wondered if I was doing things wrong, because what I've decided to do was, I love romance, I love suspense, I love murder, I love crime, but I thought romance would be easier to write than all that other stuff. I was so wrong. So I didn't write crime and murder and suspense. And I thought, okay, I'm doing something wrong. Let's put them all together and start writing a book. And I did. And that book won me the Valerie Parv Award. And after I worked with Valerie, a year later, I won a publishing contract with Penguin Random House. And they actually published my debut novel, Lethal in Love, as a 6-part serial. A year after that was published, I entered the Romantic Book of the Year award with Romance Writers Australia, and the weekend that they were announcing the award winners, Random House actually redid my book as a one thing, repackaged it as a complete novel, and I won that award. And I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And that's been my career. And I guess since then I've published several short stories, like novellas, another book in that series. I've started writing paranormal, which I absolutely adore. And then I wanted to give back for all these people that had helped me in my career. I decided I really want to give back to newbie authors and try and help them in a way that I think I could have been helped when I first started, by simplifying down some of these writing kind of, I won't say rules, but the writing craft that I struggled with so much. And that's where the Simply Writing series came in, and Simply Synopsis. So that's amazing. A very long version of my history.
Well, and so you mentioned Simply Synopsis, and we are here to talk about writing a synopsis. So first of all, can you tell listeners, what is a synopsis? How is it different to a book blurb? And why do we need one anyway?
Okay. So, very, very briefly, a synopsis is a summary that breaks down a story's central plot, introducing the central characters in a concise but interesting way. So the important parts there, the central plot, central characters, and concise but interesting. So we're going to talk a bit about that later. So I just want you to bear that in mind. Why do we need one? Really good question. And a lot of people think that this is what I get really excited about, because I'm going to sound like a real geek now. The synopsis has been viewed for so long as a tool, a submission tool for traditional publishing. And it is still that. It is very much still that. But let's think about what a synopsis does. A synopsis also can ensure that all the vital elements are present in your story. It can highlight deficiencies in your characterization and something that we call goal, motivation, conflict, GMC. I don't know if any of your listeners have heard of that, but I'll talk about a little bit about that later if you like. And that means it highlights the lack of three-dimensional characters. And your synopsis can pinpoint pacing problems, and it can pinpoint plot holes and inconsistencies. And it also can help pinpoint the central theme of your story. So if we're talking about a self-published author that's looking to publish, before they actually think about that, it doesn't hurt to actually write a synopsis of your story and check whether you've actually covered all those bases or whether there's something that actually needs deepening or working on before you actually send that book out into the world. So I think it's so much more than a submission tool now. It's like that final check before you hit publish. I'm trying to think. Oh, and then you asked about the book blurb. So why is it different? So let's think about a blurb. So you're thinking about a back cover blurb on your book. This is designed to sell your book to readers. So it hooks by not revealing the ending. It doesn't reveal all your surprises. In comparison, your synopsis is a selling tool to let agents and editors and screen directors know that you understand the qualities of a riveting story and riveting storytelling. So you need to tell them your secrets. You need to tell them your spoilers, any plot twists, anything that's going to wow them into wanting to know more about your story and understanding that you actually know how to tell a story, beginning, middle, end, and captivate your reader. So, I think, does that answer your question?
It does. It definitely does. So I guess thinking about a synopsis then and focusing on the synopsis rather than the blurb, what is like a good structure for a synopsis?
Yes. Okay. So if we're talking about a structure for a synopsis, we'd be talking about my simply synopsis structure. So if we're talking about a synopsis structure, we're talking about my simply synopsis. And oh my God, guys, so I could answer this question in 2 minutes, or I could answer it in 2 hours, and I won't really, I won't take up your time for 2 hours. But basically, a synopsis actually is comprised of 4 parts. You have your orientation, your major turning points, your resolution, and your conclusion. So it's pretty much like your story, to be honest. If we were to break those parts down even further, we could think about the orientation. So they're the opening paragraphs of your synopsis. And that the orientation itself has 4 parts. We have a hook, we have central theme, we have world building, and we have central characters. So within those opening paragraphs, what we need to do is we need to actually orient the reader into our story. We need to give them a sense of the the purpose of the story, the central theme. What is the story about? We need to give them a sense of the world. And especially when you're talking things like fantasy, paranormal, sci-fi, anything that's not our current world, we need to give them a sense of what it is about this new world that is so different from our own. So we're not going to beleaguer, we're not going to put in every single wonderful detail. We're going to choose the ones that are the most different, and I guess what I call a point of difference, okay, that are going to show them how this world operates. We have a central theme, which is part of the hook. The central theme and the hook, and actually the world building can also be part of the hook. And then we have our central characters. And I mentioned before GMC, or goal, motivation, conflict. This is where having a really clear understanding of our characters and what's driving them through the story is so important. And this is where a lot of authors that I've worked with this strategy have come to me and they're like, I cannot believe I did not know my characters well enough, or I did not actually have enough driving force for my characters. I have to go back to the drawing board and I have to strengthen them because I didn't realize they weren't three-dimensional enough. And so we're talking about GMC, goal, motivation, conflict. What does our character want? Why do they want it? And what's stopping them from getting it? And when we talk about GMC, we have our internal and external. So if we're talking about an external GMC, we're talking about something tangible, something physical that they want. And it might be, if you're thinking Indiana Jones, he wants a thing. He wants the Ark of the Covenant or whatever it may be. When we're talking internal, we're talking emotional. And this is part of our character arc. This is part of their growth in our story, that actually we want them to change and grow. So what is it that they need to overcome emotionally, whether it be fears, phobias, false beliefs, all that kind of stuff? What do we want them to overcome, and so that they can achieve their goal? So this is all just part of the first couple of paragraphs. That we encompass all of that. So hook, what did I say? Hook, world building, central theme, central characters. Do you want me to go on? Because so after we've done all that, we look at our major turning points. And the major turning points are the major plot points in our story that either move the character arc forward, so they actually help our character to grow. Or if we're talking something like a romance, it's also the major plot points that move the relationship forward. So if we were talking about the major plot points, we would be talking about things like the inciting incident, anything that, any kind of challenges or setbacks, higher stakes, all of those kind of things we want to be including in our synopsis. And when we look at including them, we want to analyze these major turning points and show how they move the plot forward. So I have a 6-step structure that I use. And for each turning point, what we need to identify is plot, character, action, motivation, reaction, and impact. So with these 6 things, what we do is we identify the plot points and the characters involved in those plot points, and any action that those characters take and why they take that action, any reactions as a result of those actions, and then what is the impact? How does this actually grow our characters? And this is the really important part. How does it actually drive our character arc forward? How does it drive our plot forward? And then with a romance as well, how does it drive our romantic relationship forward? So I always think, is all part of.
Oh, I think there might be a delay.
We've got a drink.
I think we have a delay.
I think there is a delay.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think one of the things that writers, when I read manuscripts, I have done a lot of developmental editing over the years. When I read manuscripts, one of the things that I often see a weakness in is that consequence. So you have the action, you have the reaction, but then there's not enough fallout. So what is the consequence of that reaction? What is changed by that? And I think that is one way, if you focus on that in like key scenes, that's one way to really amp up both the tension and the quality of a manuscript.
I totally agree.
So, like, a synopsis is supposed to be quite short. It's not a long thing. Obviously, that's one of the things that makes writing a synopsis tricky. So how much information should we be putting into a synopsis? And how do you know when you've put in too much or not enough? Like, how long is a good synopsis?
Oh, gee. Okay. How long is a piece of string? Wow. You know what? It really depends what the purpose of your synopsis is. What are you using your synopsis for? If you actually are going to use it as a last minute check to make sure that you have included everything before you hit publish, then I would say between 2 to 5 pages. If you're using it as a submission tool, what you really need to do is look at your publisher's guidelines. Most publishers will have a set of guidelines, and they will tell you how long the synopsis should be. And it can be anything from, I've seen publishers say they want 300 words or 600 words, or sometimes they'll say, look, we need a page or 2 pages. So of course that's going to be, each different length is going to be is going to determine how long you actually, how much content you put into your synopsis. So your major turning points, what I would suggest that writers do is, as you are writing your story or afterwards, just do a quick analysis of your story and make a list of those major turning points. And then what you need to do is have a look at how long that synopsis needs to be, and choose the turning points that have the most impact in terms of that character arc, challenging your characters and showing their growth. So you actually want to make this journey believable. And the only way it can be believable is by showing the events that challenge your character and actually force them into growth and self-realization. So, and look, to be honest, this is a really great tool to use for scene analysis, for chapter analysis. You can, if you're struggling with a chapter, writing down your plot, your character, your action, motivation, reaction, and impact. If you actually have a really good idea of that before you start writing your scene, or as you're writing your scene, you're going to be on point. You're going to stay, you're not going to stray from what you actually want to achieve in that particular scene. And remembering that every single scene needs to earn its place in your book. Every single scene should do something. And if it doesn't do something, if it doesn't drive that story and drive your character growth and drive that romance forward, then either it doesn't belong in your book, or you need to think of how you can actually use it to do that. So in terms of how do you know when you've put too much in or not enough, you need enough to orient your reader and give them a sense of your character's journey. So what they don't need to know about your secondary characters. They don't need to know about secondary plots unless they impact directly on the central plot of your story, and unless they impact on your character's growth. You basically, what I would suggest that you do, if you're looking to do a synopsis, and if you are looking to do one to submit to a traditional publisher, for each turning point that you've got on your list, ask yourself, can I safely exclude this plot point without losing the essence of my plot, my relationship development, if it's a romance, and my character growth? And if you can actually safely leave it out, and it doesn't, and you don't lose anything, then leave it out. You don't need it. So, yes.
Awesome.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what are the core mistakes you see writers making when they try and write a synopsis?
That's a great question. I love this. So most writers, they get to the end of their story and they think, okay, I want to submit this. I want to get a publisher, so I need to write a synopsis. I've just written 100,000 word book or whatever it may be, and I need to put every single plot point into my synopsis. I need to introduce all the characters, like the secondary character. Oh my God, they're so funny. I cannot leave them out. And that really great moment when X did Y and it was really hilarious, I need to put that in too. Okay. No, that is a big mistake. Again, as I said before, not all turning points will make it into your synopsis, and you only want to choose the ones that drive forward your plot, your character arc, and your relationship. And sometimes you'll have a couple of plot points that do something very similar. What I would suggest you do when you're doing your turning point paragraphs, the major turning point paragraphs, you can either bundle them up in one paragraph, or you can choose one of those several points to illustrate how your character is growing through that event and through self-realization. So another mistake that I think writers make when they're writing a synopsis, too much focus on plot, not enough focus on character. We need to focus on GMC, goal, motivation, conflict. And when we're talking about our turning points, we need to think about how they relate to our character's goal, to their motivation, to their conflict. Another mistake that I see people making, and this is really common, trying to be clever. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have such a complex plot, and especially when we're talking about world building or fantasy, it can be quite overwhelming. So we want to put all that complexity into our synopsis because that's going to really impress the reader. The problem is what it does is it confuses them instead, and we can actually lose them through the process. So we really need to simplify things down and really pare our world building and any other complexities back to their bare bones, and really just put them into simplistic forms and just really focus on the characters, give an idea of our world building, give an idea of what makes our world different, but don't include all of the facets of our world. And basically, I'd say stick to the structure that I mentioned before. We're talking about the orientation, the major turning points, and the resolution and conclusion, which they speak for themselves. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Okay, so another question then: does a writer need to worry about their voice in a synopsis? Do they need to ensure it's the same voice that's in a book, or because it's sort of an overarching summary, is that irrelevant? And if they do need to use their voice, how can they ensure that they are capturing that voice in so few words as they, compared to what they did in their novel?
That is such a great question. I have judged quite a few competitions that require a synopsis. And one of the major problems I see with people who get so caught up in the plot, and it's almost like a list of plot points to show what's happening in the story, there's no voice. Now, when we think about the primary focus of a synopsis is to actually sell our story to an editor, agent, and screen director. And just think about it, even for people who are self-published, one day we might get an opportunity to actually be able to sell our stories to a screen director, make a movie. How amazing. So we need to be able to relay that story in a way that's engaging so that somebody can actually picture it and they can actually think, wow, that's going to make a great movie. So we do need our voice. This is a story of your story, and it's a representation of your skills as a writer. So not only do we need to focus on the content in terms of our characterization, our world building, and our major turning points in driving that character story forward, we also need to do it in a way that is representative of our story and our voice. So I would say the first thing I would say is match tone to genre. So if you have a rom-com, make your synopsis funny. Have that fun, light, flirty, or whatever kind of voice that you've got in your story. Make sure it's in your synopsis. If you've got a suspense or a murder mystery, yes, we need to reveal what happens at the end of our synopsis, but make your synopsis suspenseful. Make it, just drag the reader through it the same way you drag them through your story. Don't use dialogue in your synopsis. However, you can actually get into your character's head and have those turning points and those actions, reactions, and impact come from your character. It's kind of like a deep point of view type thing. So it can still be almost a thought process, and having your synopsis come from your character rather than you telling the story is huge, because it shows your skills as a writer, and it really impress whoever's reading it, because they'll be able to tell you doing the same thing in your story. And I guess, yeah, definitely your voice. Definitely. Make sure it mirrors your story 100%.
Awesome. Thank you. So I know I mentioned in your bio, when I read your bio, that you are working on characterization through narration. So, excuse me, I am currently like binge reading everything I can possibly get my hands on side characters, or like secondary characters, whatever you want to call them. So I wondered, and I know I am putting you on the spot, so feel free to say no if you want, but I wondered what your take on side characters is, or if you have any tips for creating side characters.
Side characters. I would say, okay, side characters, when I'm creating my side characters, I will still do something that I call a GMC chart, or a goal motivation conflict chart. I believe that every person in our story has their own story. And even though they are not a main character, there is still something that's driving them through that story. And for our side characters to be three-dimensional, just as our central characters are, we need to understand who they are. And it's not so much that their story is going to be shown through our central story, but to know how they act and react, we need to understand them, because understanding who they are, where they've come from, any backstory events, which I didn't mention through the before with the structure of the synopsis, but we need to actually have an idea of backstory of our characters. The same thing needs to be said for our secondary characters, not to the same extent, but if we understand what's driving them, then I know how they speak. I know how they act. If something happens, I know how they react. And often if you're doing that whole mirroring thing where you've got a secondary character and you're, I guess if there's a bit of a contrast or a mirror in terms of your central character's journey, understanding where your secondary character is coming from is going to be a huge help into understanding how they can help your central plot and your central characters grow. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. All right, this is the Rebel Author Podcast. So can you tell us about a time you unleashed your inner rebel?
I knew you were going to ask me this. Oh my goodness. So I'm so not a rebel. And, it's funny because I've always played by the rules simply because I'm not good at ruffling feathers. However, I would probably say that the first time I ever let my rebel kind of out there would be when I decided to write romance. And what the hell? Seriously, like I came from a very conservative background. And even at the point of time when I decided to start writing, there are many of my friends who would look at romance and it's kind of like, it's not a real book. Why would you write romance when you could write a real story? And which totally annoys me now. And I for the first time ever, I actually stood up and I actually said to them, hold on a second. I want to write this because A, it's my passion, and B, who doesn't want to fall in love every day? Like, seriously. I can see you jumping up and down.
Yeah.
This is what we get to do. And I've had so many people when I've actually said to them, I get to go to work, I sit at a keyboard and I fall in love every single day. And I do not know any other jobs out there that do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I've had people look at me and like, wow, like, no, I don't get to do that. And it is such an amazing job. But to be able to be open about this and be proud of this is something really hard for an introvert who's always done the right thing and always kind of worried about what other people think. So that's my rebel. My rebel is not worrying what people think and writing romance and writing pretty sexy romance at the moment between werewolves and vampires and all sorts of things, which I never thought I would be able to do, and loving it. And so, yeah, there's my rebel.
I love it. I love it. I love that. Like, I love it when rebellions are rebellions that, like capture the heart of who we are and enable us to be the people that we want to be and do the things that, fill us with joy. I think it's so sad that we have a society that stops people from doing that. And I hear it time and time again. Every day I hear from people who, and even myself over the years, being stopped because other people don't think you fit their box. Well, fuck them. We have to be who we are. And, life is such a blink. It's so short that, there's just isn't time to not be our best selves, So yeah, I loved your rebellion. All right.
Thank you. I just want to say, sorry, I know you're going. So I just wanted to say, and I guess for anybody out there who is listening, who hasn't followed their passion or who hasn't followed their dream, or anybody who's been worried about doing what they want to do because of what people think or what they think, or even not believing that they can do it, I would say, from a person who waited 40 plus whatever years, I hate to say that, to do what she wanted to do, I would say to people, go out and do it. Like, don't wait. If something has been sitting there smoldering in the background and you've never really had that kind of confidence to go out there and do it, just do it. Go out there and be the best that you can be and follow your passion, because you might surprise yourself. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you succeed or whatever your idea of success is. I would just say do it and enjoy every minute of it, because we only get one chance and we only get one life. And I wish I'd done this earlier, and I'm so glad I did it when I did and didn't wait any longer. So
yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. Okay, so where can listeners find out more about you, your books, your blog, that kind of stuff?
So I'm everywhere. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram. I've got a bit of a YouTube thing happening, but not much at the moment. I would say the best place to find me would be my website, though. So that's www.michelle-summers.com. And you can find all my links to all the places there. I also do a monthly Simply Writing blog through Romance Writers of Australia. It's been a bit dormant lately because my brain's been a bit dormant with lockdown and all sorts of things, but that's hopefully going to be getting up again soon. So people can find old blogs there on all sorts of writing craft, including the Simply Synopsis, characterisation through narration, hooks, all sorts of things. So, go there and see what you can find. There's a whole lot of information for authors starting out, and that would
amazing.
Be it.
Thank you so much for your time today. And
thank you, Sasha.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you also to everybody listening. And of course, a big thank you to the show's patrons. If you would like to get early access to all of the episodes, then you can do so by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. And that is Sasha with a C and not an S. I'm Sasha Black. You were listening to Michelle Summers, and this was the Rebel Author Podcast. Next week, I'll be joined by Mike Reeves McMillan, and we'll be talking about all the nitty-gritty parts of writing. So join me next week for that. Don't forget to tune in and subscribe on your podcatcher. And when you have a moment, please leave a review.